I'm so excited to be joined this evening with Brad Lander, the Comptroller for New York City, who's also a Democratic candidate for Mayor of New York City. Brad, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I just want to jump right in and talk about the events of earlier today, your unlawful detainment by ICE officials in a New York City courthouse. Could you just tell us what led to that and really what happened?
Yeah, so I've been going the last couple of weeks as part of a friend of the court program run by a group called Immigrant that invites people to come sit and observe in immigration hearings. And what Department of Homeland Security has been doing is moving essentially to strip people of their status as asylum seekers, even though they did everything the right way. They checked in at the border, they filed their asylum application, they came to their hearing. So we go and observe, try to make sure they know their rights because they don't have lawyers and aren't given any, legal representation. And then if the DHS orders it and the judge agrees to strip them of their status, just try to accompany them out of the building. And so on five previous times, I've been able to walk with families out of the building and help them get to the subway, go back to their neighborhood or their kids. But in this case, with this gentleman named Edgardo, I was just trying to walk with him out of the building when ICE agents came up and grabbed him. I asked to see the judicial warrant that they should have. They refused to show it to me. They ripped him away from me, and then they arrested me.
Well, what happened? Kind of walk us through. So when they kind of grabbed you and they're alleging that you were locking arms with him and you were resisting arrest somehow, but they grabbed you. You had an image of a masked agent, completely masked. You can't really even see his face. What happened next? Where first, I guess, were you trying to resist in any way? And second, what happened after they separated you and tried to move you away?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of cameras in there, so people can watch and see for themselves, what happened. I was simply asking for them to show me the judicial warrant, and at the point in time, anyway, people could watch and see what happens. I don't. And then yes, after they arrested me, they took me to a detention room where they held me for about 3.5 hours. They have not brought charges, but I understand that they're reviewing the case. Governor Hochul then came down to the court building, and then they released me, and the governor and I left the building. Unfortunately, Edgardo and another guy, Zed, who I had met, not so lucky. I mean, I'm going to go home and sleep in my bed, and if I need a lawyer, I have one, and I could count on my due process rights being met. But Edgardo's in ICE detention tonight, God knows where, and has no lawyer and no due process, and that is what our attention's got to be focused on.
Do you think that you were only released this afternoon because Governor Hochul came down to the federal building?
I mean, I don't know, what went into their decision. It's clear that the Trump administration is working hard to ratchet up these incidents, all across the country. We saw what happened with Senator Padilla and with Russ Baraka and in LA with the National Guard. And this change 3 weeks ago to strip people of their asylum seeker status by dismissing their cases is clearly an attempt by the Trump administration to ratchet up fear in immigrant communities and conflict in democratic cities. And that's sure what it seemed like is happening here.
Are you worried at all that they are going to try to make you an example for kind of future elected officials and potentially bring charges and pursue a criminal case here?
I mean, look, I was glad to hear that they did not bring charges, but they are reviewing the case, and we'll have to see what happens. I have a lot more fear for people like Edgardo and Zed than I do for me. I mean, thousands and thousands of asylum seekers and immigrants across the country aren't getting any due process, don't have lawyers. We don't know where they are. They're supposed to get a credible hearing on their cases. Um, but I do think it's an important time for people to show up. There's that old Martin Niemöller poem, first they came for the socialists and I did not speak up. And we all went out in the streets over the weekend for the No Kings March, which was wonderful. And we have to find kind of insistent, nonviolent ways to bear witness. And that's what Immigrant Arc is doing. And, we can't afford to feel fear right now. We do need to prevent them from ratcheting conflict and violence up. We've got to do this in a way which really is insistent in its kind of nonviolence. but which refuses to let the rule of law be undermined in our cities. I think that's the kind of leadership people are expecting right now.
Right. And I want to pivot a little bit and talk about what you would do as mayor of New York City if you are elected when it comes to ICE and immigration. Generally speaking, Donald Trump, as you mentioned earlier, is targeting blue cities, Democratic run cities, one of which is New York, which he listed in his Truth Social post. What would you do, if anything, to ensure that immigrants in New York City are protected as mayor?
Yeah. Let's start by remembering why we have these sanctuary city laws, which we've had for years. And I was proud to be a co sponsor when I was a city council member of the most recent one. You know, you want people to know that if they're going to take their kids to school, their kids will be safe. If they see a crime, they can be a witness. Like the whole idea here is to make sure that people know, like, the rule of law will apply and their immigration status won't be weaponized against them. New York City's got 8 million people. 40% are immigrants, are foreign born, 50% in mixed status households, including a million kids. So this is the future of New York City that is on the line. It's not some small number of cases, and they really have just ripped down all the boundaries on people's cases. So yes, as mayor, partly I thought as an elected official right now it was important to go down there and start getting busy showing up. But there's so much more the city could be doing. For families in schools, for example, the parent coordinators in those schools or the social workers or the guidance counselors could be reaching out and saying, do you have a lawyer? If not, can we connect you to one? So before you go to your hearing, you get advice on how to handle it and what to do. I went to one of the couples last week, a couple named Maria and Manuel. They were there without their kids. Their kids were in school, and they hadn't realized they could be subject to removal at the hearing. And so, as they're realizing that, they're afraid they're never going to see their kids again. And thankfully, that was one of the cases where they did walk out of the building. They got back to their kids, thank God. But we should be using the connections we have with people in the schools or the shelter system or the public libraries and hospital system to say, hey, if you want a referral to hopefully a lawyer, but at least some pro se legal advice on what makes sense for you to do, whether you should go to that hearing, how you should prepare, should you bring your kids. None of these folks are getting any information, and the federal government is trying to keep the information they need from them. So, what New York
Right.
City could be doing starts from saying we're not going to allow ICE agents in our schools or hospitals or jails, but it really should go further to say we are going to get you legal representation and advice so you can make the best possible decision and be protected.
And my final question here is, what is your message tonight to New Yorkers who are worried about the future of the city under current Mayor Adams in the next several months? And what can New Yorkers do if they want to support your campaign? What can they do to do that?
Yeah, so the election's already underway, where early voting is happening now through Sunday, and Election Day itself is 1 week from today, from on Tuesday, June 24th. And yeah, we have a chance to have a mayor that represents New York's values and will actually fight and effectively deliver them. So I hope you'll rank me first on your ballot. If you want to get involved in the campaign, you can go to landerfornyc.com, LANDERFORNYC. I will say 5 of the other mayoral candidates showed up to call for my release today. One who did not was Andrew Cuomo. And I would urge everyone to keep him nowhere on your ballot. He will not show up for the values of New Yorkers. He just will only show up for himself. And obviously, Eric Adams spoke volumes in making the deal that he made with Donald Trump. But what's beautiful is, I'm putting myself out there, and there are other candidates who believe in the values reflected in having the Statue of Liberty in our harbor, and are going to stand up and fight for them. And that's what's great about being a New Yorker. You can come out and march in the streets for new kings. You can come out and march in the streets for pride. You could vote for a mayor that will represent the values of New Yorkers really proudly and effectively.
Brad Lander, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I really appreciate it.
Honor to be on with you, Aaron. Thanks so much.